A paramedic pulled a dying boy from a burning car without thinking twice. She didn't know he was a Mafia boss's son. What the dangerous father did next to repay her changed everything, but the price of his gratitude was higher than she ever imagined. The coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but Claire Monroe didn't have time to care. She gripped the steering wheel of her Honda Civic, weaving through downtown traffic like she was still driving the ambulance she'd just clocked out of. 12-hour shifts did that to you, made you forget where the emergency ended and regular life began. Her scrubs still smelled faintly of disinfectant and the particular kind of sweat that came from saving 3 lives before lunch. The radio crackled with news she wasn't listening to. Something about federal investigations. Something about organized crime. Claire's mind was somewhere else entirely, on the overdue electric bill sitting on her kitchen counter, on her son Ethan's parent-teacher conference tomorrow, on the groceries she still needed to pick up before the store closed. Single motherhood was its own kind of emergency, one that never ended. The sky above the city had turned an ugly shade of copper, thick with industrial smoke from the factories on the east side. A storm was rolling in fast, the kind that made the whole city smell like rust and rain. Claire checked her phone at a red light, 6:47 p.m. If she hurried, she could grab Ethan from her neighbor Mrs. Chen's apartment by 7:30, maybe even heat up some leftovers that passed for dinner. That's when the world exploded. The black SUV came out of nowhere, cutting across 3 lanes like a shark through water. Claire's instincts screamed at her to brake, but there was no time. The SUV was followed by 2 more, a convoy moving at a legal speed, and then came the sound that would replay in her nightmares for months.
Boom.
The lead vehicle erupted in a ball of orange flame that turned the copper sky blood red. The shockwave hit Claire's car like a physical punch, sending her skidding sideways. She barely managed to avoid slamming into the concrete barrier as burning metal rained down across 4 lanes of highway. For 3 seconds, the world went silent. That strange, hollow quiet that comes after violence. Then the screaming started. Claire's hands moved before her brain caught up. She was out of her car, her paramedic training overriding every instinct that told her to run the other way. The heat from the burning wreckage hit her face like an oven door swinging open. Black smoke poured into the sky, mixing with the storm clouds until you couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. Help! Somebody help! The voice was small.
Young.
Claire's eyes found the source, the second SUV, crumpled against the highway divider, but not yet burning. The back door hung open at an angle, and through the smoke she could see movement. Small hands pressed against the window. She ran. Her sneakers pounded against asphalt littered with glass and twisted metal. Behind her, other drivers were finally emerging from their cars, phones out, voices panicked. Someone was shouting about calling 911. The air tasted like burning rubber and something worse, something that made Claire's stomach turn. The boy couldn't have been older than 8 or 9. Dark hair, olive skin, wearing what looked like a private school uniform now covered in dust and blood. He was crying, pulling desperately at his seatbelt, and Claire could see why. The front of the vehicle was starting to smoke, that telltale gray that came right before the flames. "I've got you," Claire shouted, reaching through the mangled door. "Don't move, sweetheart, let me." The seatbelt was jammed. Of course it was. Claire's fingers worked frantically at the mechanism, her medic's mind cataloging injuries even as her hands moved. Possible concussion. Definitely in shock. Cuts on his face and arms, but nothing arterial.
Not yet.
The smoke was getting thicker. "My dad," the boy gasped, tears cutting clean lines through the soot on his face. "My dad was in the front." "Don't look," Claire said firmly, finally getting the seatbelt release to give way. She could see the front seats now, could see enough to know that no one up there needed her help anymore. "Don't look, just come to me, that's it." She pulled him through the door just as the smoke turned black and oily. The boy wrapped his arms around her neck in a death grip, and Claire ran, her lungs burning, her eyes streaming. They made it 15 feet before the second SUV exploded. The blast threw them both forward. Claire twisted mid-fall, taking the impact on her shoulder and hip while cradling the boy's head against her chest. They hit the pavement hard enough to knock the air from her lungs. Debris rained down around them, glass, metal, things Claire didn't want to identify. When she could breathe again, she looked down. The boy was staring up at her with enormous brown eyes, still crying but alive. Very much alive. "You're okay," Claire told him, even though her whole body was screaming. "You're okay, I've got you." Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. The storm finally broke, rain beginning to fall in heavy drops that hissed against the burning wreckage. Other people were running toward them now. Good Samaritans, off-duty cops, someone with a fire extinguisher that wouldn't be nearly enough. Claire sat up slowly, still holding the boy, checking him over with practiced hands. Bumps and bruises, some cuts that would need cleaning, but by some miracle nothing broken. He'd have nightmares, would probably need therapy, but he was alive. "What's your name?" she asked gently. "Leo," he whispered. "Leo Vescari." The name meant nothing to Claire. She smoothed his hair back from his forehead, felt the knot already forming there, made mental notes for the EMTs who were now scrambling out of the ambulances pulling up to the scene. "You're going to be fine, Leo. I promise." That's when she felt it, that particular weight of being watched. Claire looked up, rain now falling hard enough to blur her vision, and saw him standing about 30 feet away, just beyond the police line that was rapidly forming. A man in an expensive suit, despite the rain, despite the chaos. He stood perfectly still, water streaming down his face, his dark eyes locked on the boy in Claire's arms with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Even from that distance, even through the rain and smoke and confusion, Claire could see his expression. It wasn't relief. It was something much more complicated, something that looked like grief and rage, and a dozen other things all fighting for control behind a carefully maintained mask. A police officer was suddenly talking to her, asking questions, trying to take Leo from her arms, but Claire barely heard. She was still looking at the man in the suit, the man who was now walking away, melting into the crowd of onlookers even as more police arrived. One of the officers helping her to her feet was talking excitedly. "You're a hero, ma'am. That was incredibly brave. Do you know who that kid is? Do you know whose son you just saved?" Claire shook her head, accepting the blanket someone draped over her shoulders. The officer's expression shifted, respect mixed with something that might have been pity. "Alessandro Vescari's boy. That's the Vescari kid." The name still meant nothing to Claire. She was cold, she was wet, her whole body hurt, and she just wanted to go home to her own son. "Is that supposed to mean something?" she asked. The officer and his partner exchanged a look. "Lady," the partner said slowly, "you just saved the son of the most dangerous man in the city." Claire's apartment building looked different at night, smaller somehow, more vulnerable. She'd lived in the same third-floor walk-up for 6 years, knew every crack in the sidewalk, every broken mailbox in the lobby. It had always felt safe enough, in that tired urban way where safe just meant familiar. Tonight, standing in the hallway outside her door with grocery bags cutting into her palms, she noticed the silence first. Mrs. Chen's television was always on, Korean dramas that bled through the thin walls at a volume meant for someone twice her age. But tonight, nothing. The hallway was quiet as a held breath. Claire's keys were already in her hand when she saw it. Her door, closed but not quite latched. The deadbolt she always engaged was turned horizontal. Unlocked. Her first thought was Ethan. But no, Ethan was safe at her sister's place across town, had been there since she'd called from the hospital getting checked out. The police had recommended she send him somewhere else for the night, just as a precaution, though they wouldn't say what they were being cautious about. Now Claire understood why. She should have run. Should have called 911, waited in the stairwell, done any of the sensible things they taught you in those workplace safety seminars. Instead, she pushed the door open slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs. The living room lights were on, warm and yellow, exactly as she'd left them that morning. Nothing looked disturbed. The dishes were still in the sink. Ethan's backpack still slumped by the couch where he'd abandoned it yesterday. Everything normal, except for the man sitting in her armchair like he'd been invited. Alessandro Vescari looked different up close. Younger than she'd expected, maybe late 30s, with the kind of face that photographs probably loved. Sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that missed nothing, hair still damp from the rain that had finally stopped an hour ago. He'd changed out of the ruined suit from a highway. This one was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, probably worth more than Claire's car. In his hands, he held a bouquet of white roses and an envelope. "Miss Monroe," he said quietly. His voice was educated, careful, the kind of voice that made you forget what the police had told her about him. "Please don't be afraid." Claire's hand was still on the doorknob. Every instinct told her to run, but her legs wouldn't move. "Oh, how did you get in here?" "Your locks are inadequate," he said it like he was commenting on the weather. "I'll have better ones installed tomorrow." "You broke into my home." "I let myself in," he corrected gently. "Breaking implies damage." "I assure you, everything is exactly as you left it." He stood slowly, movements deliberate, like someone trying not to startle a wild animal. "I came to thank you for saving my son's life." Claire's fingers tightened on the doorknob. Behind her, the hallway remained empty, silent.
No neighbors, no witnesses.
"You could have called."
Sent a card.
Normal things that normal people do. Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. "I'm not normal people, Ms. Monroe. And what you did today, pulling Leo from that car, that deserves more than a phone call." He set the roses on her coffee table, placed the envelope beside them with the careful precision of someone who thought about every movement. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, expensive. "There's $50,000 in cash in there," Alessandro said. "It's not payment. You can't pay someone for your child's life. It's gratitude. A beginning." Claire finally found her voice, and with it, her anger. "I don't want your money." "I know," he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You returned the check the hospital tried to give you. You refused the mayor's ceremony. You're not interested in recognition or reward. That's precisely why I'm here. Then take your money and leave." "I can't do that." He moved toward her, not threatening, just closer, and Claire caught the faint smell of expensive cologne and something underneath it, sharp and chemical. "Gunpowder, maybe." "You saved my son, Miss Monroe. In my world, that creates a debt. A serious 1 inch. "I'm a paramedic," Claire said, her voice harder than she felt. "I save lives."
That's my job.
"There's no debt." "There is to me." Alessandro reached up, slowly, and adjusted his tie, a nervous gesture that seemed oddly human. "Leo is everything. The only good thing in a very dark world."
You gave him back to me.
"So now I'm asking, if not money, then how? How do I repay something that large?" Claire wanted to tell him to leave, to take his blood money and his dark world, and get out of her life. But something in his face stopped her, not threat, but a kind of desperate sincerity that she hadn't expected. This wasn't a monster. This was a father. "You don't," she said finally. "You just be grateful. Love your son. Keep him safe. That's enough." Alessandro studied her for a long moment, those dark eyes searching for something. "You really believe that?" "Yes." "Then you're a better person than anyone I've ever known." He moved toward the door, pausing beside her. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in his face, the barely controlled grief still raw from losing his men in that explosion. "The money will remain in the envelope. When you need it, and you will need it, Ms. Monroe, life has a way of demanding things we can't afford. It will be waiting. I won't use it. We'll see." He opened the door, stepped into the hallway, then looked back. "One more thing. The people who attacked my convoy today, they're still out there. They know Leo survived. They know someone pulled him out." Claire's blood went cold. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying I've posted security on your building. Discreet, professional. You won't see them, but they're there. For your protection and your son's." "I didn't ask for that." "I know," Alessandro's expression softened. "But Leo asked me to make sure you were safe." He's 8 years old, and he already understands debt better than most adults. So, humor him. Humor me. He left without waiting for an answer, his footsteps silent on the stairs. Claire stood in her doorway for a long time after he disappeared, staring at the white roses and the envelope full of money she'd never touch, wondering what she'd really saved when she pulled that boy from the burning car. Wondering what it was going to cost her. 3 days later, Claire was scrubbing blood from her hands in the hospital staff bathroom when her phone rang. The number was Ethan's school, Lincoln Elementary, where he was supposed to be safely sitting through 4th grade math, not calling his mother during her shift. "Miss Monroe?" The school nurse's voice was professionally calm, which only made Claire's stomach drop. Ethan collapsed during PE. "We've called an ambulance, but I thought you should know." Claire didn't remember the drive to the hospital. 1 minute she was in the staff bathroom. The next she was running through the pediatric emergency ward, still wearing her scrubs, her hair falling out of its ponytail. She found Ethan in exam room 3, small and pale against the white sheets, an oxygen monitor clipped to his finger. He looked up when she burst through the door and tried to smile.
Mom, I'm okay.
Everyone's being dramatic. But his lips had a blue tint that made Claire's professional training scream danger even as her mother's heart wanted to believe him. Dr. Patel, one of the pediatric cardiologists Claire knew from working emergency transfers, was reviewing charts with a grave expression. He looked up when Claire approached, and she saw it immediately, the careful sympathy doctors reserved for delivering bad news. "Claire, let's talk outside." The hallway was quieter, more private. Dr. Patel didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Ethan has hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It's a genetic condition. The heart muscle becomes abnormally thick, restricts blood flow. It's why he collapsed. His heart couldn't keep up during physical exertion." Claire had heard those words before, had transported patients with the same diagnosis. But hearing it about your own child was different. The medical knowledge in her brain couldn't override the terror flooding her system. "Treatment." Her voice came out steady somehow. "Professional. There's a surgical procedure, myectomy combined with valve repair. It's delicate, highly specialized." Dr. Patel hesitated. "The best surgeon for this is Dr. Helena Kozlov. She's in Switzerland. Success rate is 94%, but the surgery costs around $500,000. Maybe more with travel, aftercare, the specialized facilities she requires." He met her eyes with genuine regret. "I've already contacted your insurance. They're denying coverage, calling it experimental despite the success rates."
I'm sorry, Claire.
The number sat in her chest like a stone. $500,000. She made $43,000 a year as a paramedic. Had maybe $2,000 in savings after last month's car repair. Her credit cards were nearly maxed from Ethan's school expenses and the dental work he'd needed last year. "How long?" she asked quietly. "Without surgery? Maybe a year, 18 months. With activity restrictions, medication, constant monitoring." "But Claire," Dr. Patel's voice softened. "He's 10 years old. That's no life for a child. And there's always the risk of sudden cardiac arrest. Any exertion, any stress." He didn't need to finish. Claire understood exactly what he meant. Her son was living with a time bomb in his chest. She stayed with Ethan until visiting hours ended, holding his hand while he slept, his heart monitor beeping steadily beside them. Each beep felt like a countdown. When the nurses finally made her leave, she walked to her car in a daze. The envelope was still on her kitchen counter, where she'd left it 3 days ago.
$52,000.
Alessandro Vescari's blood money, his payment for a debt she hadn't wanted to acknowledge. It wasn't enough. Not even close. But it was something. Claire sat at her kitchen table until 2 a.m., her laptop open, searching for options that didn't exist. Medical loans she wouldn't qualify for. Fundraising campaigns that would take years. Clinical trials that Ethan's specific condition didn't match. Every avenue led to the same dead end. At 2:17 a.m., she opened the envelope. The cash was real, neatly banded, exactly $50,000 as promised. Tucked underneath was a business card, heavy stock embossed lettering. No company name, just a phone number and 2 words. Call anytime. Claire stared at that card for 20 minutes. She knew what Alessandro Vescari was. The police had been clear enough after the highway attack. The news reports she'd finally forced herself to watch were even clearer. Organized crime, money laundering, suspected connections to 3 unsolved murders. The kind of man whose money came with strings attached, even when he claimed otherwise. But he was also a father who'd sat in her apartment with grief still raw on his face, who'd assigned security to protect her son, who'd looked at her with something that almost resembled respect. And Ethan was dying. The thought came sudden and sharp. This is temporary. Take the money, save Ethan, walk away. It's just money. It doesn't mean anything. But Claire had been a paramedic long enough to know that blood always left stains, no matter how carefully you tried to wash it away. And Alessandro Vescari's world was built on blood. Outside her window, the city lights blurred through tears she'd been holding back since the hospital. Somewhere out there, a father slept knowing his son was safe because a stranger had been brave enough to run into fire. Now that stranger's own son was dying, and the only lifeline came wrapped in danger. Claire picked up the business card, her hands shaking. She told herself it was just a phone call, just a conversation. That didn't mean anything either. But she knew better. The moment she dialed that number, everything would change. She dialed anyway. The mansion sat behind iron gates in the kind of neighborhood where the houses had names instead of numbers. Claire had driven past this area before. Everyone in the city knew where the wealthy lived, but she'd never had reason to enter. Now, sitting in her Honda with the engine ticking as it cooled, she felt like an intruder in a world that wasn't meant for people like her. The gates opened before she could second-guess herself.
No intercom, no announcement.
They'd been expecting her. A man in a black suit, security, obviously, guided her up a curved driveway lined with manicured hedges. The house itself was all marble and tall windows, the kind of place that belonged in magazines, not real life. Claire clutched her purse tighter, feeling suddenly conscious of her Target jeans and the coffee stain on her jacket. Alessandro met her at the door himself. No butler, no staff. He wore dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, more casual than before, but somehow that made him seem more dangerous, not less. More real. Ms. Monroe, he stepped aside to let her enter. Thank you for coming. You knew I would. It came out harder than she intended. I hoped. He led her through a foyer with floors so polished Claire could see her reflection. My son is upstairs doing homework.
He's been asking about you.
The woman who saved him. They entered what must have been his office. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk, leather furniture that probably cost more than her annual salary. But what struck Claire most was how quiet it was. No city sounds penetrated these walls. It felt like being underwater. Alessandro gestured to a chair, but Claire remained standing. I need to be clear about something, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. I'm not here because I want her help. I'm here because my son is dying, and I don't have any other choice. I understand. Do you? Claire's hands clenched into fists. Do you understand what it's like to watch your child slip away because you can't afford to save them? To know that money, just money, is the only thing standing between life and death. Alessandro's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Yes, he said quietly. I understand exactly what that feels like. 3 days ago, I watched my son's car explode. I thought I'd lost everything. Then a stranger ran into fire and gave him back to me. He moved to his desk, pulled out a folder. So, when that stranger needs help, there's no question. None. He opened the folder, slid it across the desk toward her. Claire saw her name, Ethan's name, medical records she hadn't authorized anyone to access. You investigated us. The violation of it hit her like a slap. I keep tabs on people who matter, Alessandro said without apology. Ethan has hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. You need Dr. Kozlov in Switzerland. The surgery costs approximately $530,000, including travel and recovery. Your insurance denied coverage yesterday at 3:47 p.m. Claire's throat tightened. He knew everything. Had probably known before she'd even made the decision to call. I can't pay you back, she whispered. Not in my lifetime. I'm not asking you to. Alessandro closed the folder. The debt is mine, not yours. Let me clear it. It was too easy. Too simple. Claire had lived in the real world long enough to know that nothing came without a price, especially not from men like Alessandro Vescari. What's the catch? No catch. There's always a catch. Alessandro studied her for a long moment, then did something unexpected. He smiled. A real smile, tired and almost sad. You're smart to be suspicious. In my world, everything has a price. But this? He tapped the folder. This is just a father helping another parent save their child.
No strings, no obrigações, no favor zoved.
I don't believe you. I don't blame you. He pulled out his phone, made a call. Marcus? Transfer funds to Swiss Medical International. Patient name Ethan Monroe. Authorization code 77 Delta. He hung up, looked at Claire. It's done. Dr. Kozlov's office will contact you tomorrow with scheduling options. Claire felt the floor shift under her feet. Just like that. Just like that. She should have felt relief, gratitude. Instead, she felt trapped, like walls were closing in around her even in this enormous room.
Why?
Alessandro moved to the window, looked out at grounds that stretched farther than Claire could see. My father once told me that power means nothing if you can't protect the people you love. I couldn't protect my men in that convoy. I couldn't protect Leo from that bomb. But you could, he turned back to her. So, now I protect what you love. It's the only currency that matters. 2 weeks later, Claire stood in the hospital billing office, trying to sign the paperwork for Ethan's transfer to Switzerland. The administrator kept frowning at her computer screen, typing and retyping something. I'm sorry, Ms. Monroe, but there's an issue with the payment source. Claire's heart sank. What kind of issue? It's listed as coming from Vescari Holdings. The administrator looked up, concerned. We're required to report large transactions from certain entities to federal authorities. It's already been flagged. The words took a moment to register. Then Claire understood. By accepting Alessandro's help, she hadn't just taken his money. She'd connected her name to his. Permanently. In official records that the FBI would see. She'd walked into his world voluntarily, and now there was no walking back out. Ms. Monroe? The administrator was watching her carefully. Should I proceed with the paperwork? Claire thought of Ethan, small and pale in his hospital bed, his heart struggling with every beat. Thought of Alessandro's words, no strings, no obligations. But the strings were already there, woven tight the moment she'd dialed his number. She just hadn't seen them yet. Yes, Claire said, picking up the pen. Proceed. She signed her name, and with it, signed away any chance of staying clear of Alessandro Vescari's dangerous world. The FBI agents arrived on a Tuesday morning, which felt somehow worse than if they'd come in the middle of the night. Nighttime visits suggested urgency, drama, something you could categorize as unusual. But Tuesday at 9 a.m., when Claire was pouring cereal for Ethan before his cardiology appointment, felt like an invasion of normal life. Two of them, a woman in a gray pantsuit with sharp eyes and a manila folder, and a man built like he'd played college football, his badge clipped prominently to his belt. Claire Monroe. The woman held up her credentials. I'm Special Agent Sarah Chun. This is Agent Marcus Webb. FBI. We need to talk about Alessandro Vescari. Ethan looked up from his cereal, eyes wide. Claire forced a smile she didn't feel. Ethan, go brush your teeth. We'll leave in 10 minutes. But Mom. Now, please. He went, shooting curious glances back at the agents. Claire waited until she heard the bathroom door close before turning to face them, arms crossed over her chest. You need a warrant to be in my home. Your door was open, Agent Chin said smoothly. We knocked. You invited us in. I did no such thing. Memory's a funny thing. Agent Webb moved into her small living room like he owned it, eyes scanning everything. The bills on the coffee table, the medical paperwork, Ethan's school photos on the wall. Nice place.
Cozy.
How does a paramedic afford Swiss medical care for her kid? Claire's jaw tightened. That's none of your business. Actually, it became our business when you accepted $500,000 from a known criminal. Agent Chen opened her folder, spread photos across Claire's kitchen counter like she was dealing cards. This is you, entering Vescary's estate 3 weeks ago. This is you, leaving 2 hours later. This is the money transfer from Vescary Holdings to Swiss Medical International. Want to tell us what you discussed? Claire looked at the photos, clear, time-stamped, taken from multiple angles. They'd been watching her. Probably still were. He's paying for my son's surgery. That's not illegal. Depends on what he's getting in return. Agent Webb picked up one of Ethan's drawings from the fridge, a crayon family portrait. Nice kid. How old?
10?
That's a tough age to lose a parent. The threat was subtle, but unmistakable. Claire felt cold despite the morning sunlight streaming through her windows. Are you threatening me? We're explaining your situation. Agent Chen's voice remained professional, almost kind. Alessandro Vescari runs one of the largest criminal organizations on the East Coast. Money laundering, extortion, racketeering. 3 unsolved homicides directly linked to his operations. He's been untouchable for years because he's smart, keeps his hands clean, his operations compartmentalized. Then why are you talking to me? Because he made a mistake. Agent Chen tapped one of the photos. He put his name on that payment, connected himself to you in official records. That gives us leverage. Agent Webb leaned against her counter. We've been trying to build a case against Vescary for 4 years. We get close, witnesses disappear. Evidence vanishes. Bank accounts get buried under shell companies.
But now...
He smiled, and it wasn't friendly. Now we have you. Someone he cares about protecting. Claire's stomach dropped. I don't know anything about his business. You know him. You've been in his home, met his son, earned his trust. Agent Chen pulled out another photo, this one of Alessandro himself, standing on his mansion's balcony. We need someone on the inside. Someone he won't suspect. You want me to spy on him? Claire's voice came out flat, disbelieving. We want you to observe. Listen. Report back on conversations, meetings, people who visit. Anything that might help us build our case. And if I refuse? The agents exchanged a glance. Agent Chen's expression hardened. Then we investigate where that money really came from. Money laundering is a federal crime, Ms. Monroe. Accepting proceeds from criminal activity makes you an accessory. Ethan's surgery would be paid for with blood money, and that makes you complicit. She paused. Let it sink in. We could seize those funds. Freeze your accounts. Your son's surgery is scheduled for next month, isn't it? Shame if something disrupted that. Claire's hands shook with rage. You would let a child die to get to Vescary. We would hold you accountable for your choices, Agent Webb corrected. You took money from a criminal. That has consequences. I saved his son's life. And he's using that debt to pull you into his world. Agent Chen's voice softened slightly. Ms. Monroe, I understand you were desperate. But Alessandro Vescary isn't a man who does favors without expecting something back. Maybe he hasn't asked yet, but he will. And when he does, you'll be in too deep to say no. The bathroom door opened. Ethan emerged, toothbrush in hand, sensing the tension. Mom, are these people bothering you? Claire's heart broke at the protectiveness in her 10-year-old's voice. She moved to him, put a hand on his shoulder. No, honey. They're just leaving. Agent Chen gathered her photos, tucked them back into the folder. She pulled out a business card, set it on the counter. Think about what we said. You have 48 hours to decide. After that, we move forward with our investigation. With or without your cooperation, she glanced at Ethan, her expression unreadable. For what it's worth, I hope you make the right choice. For both of you. They left as quietly as they'd arrived. Claire stood in her kitchen. Agent Chen's card burning a hole in her vision, while Ethan hugged her waist. Mom, what did they want? Claire thought about Alessandro's promise, no strings, no obligations. Thought about the FBI's threats. Thought about being trapped between two dangerous worlds, with her son's life hanging in the balance of whatever choice she made. Nothing important, she lied, pulling Ethan closer. Just some questions about an accident I worked. But as she grabbed her keys and headed for the door, she pocketed Agent Chen's card. She didn't know which side was more dangerous, the criminal who'd saved her son, or the law enforcement willing to destroy him. All she knew was that she was caught between them, and 48 hours wasn't nearly enough time to find a way out. The invitation arrived in a cream-colored envelope, hand-delivered by the same security guard who'd escorted Claire to Alessandro's mansion. Inside, elegant script on heavy cardstock. Leo's 9th birthday celebration. Saturday, 4 p.m. Your presence would honor us both. Claire almost didn't go. The FBI's card was still in her wallet, their 48-hour deadline looming. Going deeper into Alessandro's world seemed like the exact opposite of what she should be doing. But when she called to politely decline, Leo himself got on the phone. Please come, Ms. Monroe, his small voice pleaded. Dad said I could invite anyone I wanted, and I want you there. You saved my life. So Saturday afternoon found Claire standing in front of her closet, trying to figure out what you wore to a Mafia boss's son's birthday party. She settled on a simple navy dress, nice enough to be respectful, plain enough not to stand out. Ethan was at his pre-surgery appointment in the city. She'd go straight thereafter, she told herself. This was just an hour, maybe two. A courtesy visit. The mansion's grounds had been transformed. White tents dotted the lawn, strings of lights already glowing in the late afternoon sun. Claire counted maybe 40 guests, families mostly, children running across the grass, while adults clustered in small groups, champagne flutes in hand. It looked almost normal. If you didn't notice the security guards positioned at careful intervals, or the way certain men had that particular alertness of people always watching for danger. You came. Leo materialized beside her, grinning, pulling her toward the party. The bruises from the accident had faded, but Claire could still see the thin scar on his forehead. Dad said you might not come. He said you were probably busy. I wouldn't miss it, Claire said, and realized she meant it. There was something about this kid, his resilience, his genuine sweetness, that made the danger surrounding him feel like a sad mistake. Alessandro found her 20 minutes later as she was watching Leo open presents with his friends. He appeared at her elbow with 2 glasses of champagne, offering her one. He hasn't stopped talking about you for 3 weeks, Alessandro said quietly. You're his hero. I just did what anyone would do. No, Alessandro's voice was firm. Most people would have kept driving. Self-preservation is a powerful instinct. You overrode it. He took a sip of champagne, his eyes on his son. That makes you either very brave or very foolish. Maybe both. He smiled at that. A real smile that transformed his face, made him look younger, less dangerous.
Come.
Let me introduce you to some people. The next hour was surreal. Claire met Leo's teacher, his pediatrician, family friends who spoke Italian, and kissed both her cheeks like she was one of them. No one mentioned what Alessandro did for a living. They talked about schools, weather, the city's terrible traffic. Normal things. Safe things. It was almost possible to forget who these people were. As the sun began setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Claire found herself on the mansion's balcony, grateful for a moment of quiet. The party continued below, Leo's laughter carrying up on the breeze, but up here, she could breathe. Running away already. Alessandro's voice came from behind her. Claire turned. He'd loosened his tie, rolled up his sleeves. He looked tired, but there was something lighter in his expression than she'd seen before. Just needed air. It's a beautiful party. Leo deserves beautiful things. Alessandro joined her at the railing, close enough that she could smell his cologne. He's had too much darkness in his young life. His mother died when he was 4. Cancer. After that, it was just him and me trying to figure out how to be a family in a world that doesn't forgive weakness. The admission surprised Claire.
I'm sorry.
I didn't know. How could you? Alessandro stared out at the grounds, at his son playing below. People see what I am, the violence, the power, the money, and they think I chose this. But I didn't choose it, Ms. Monroe. I inherited it. My father's empire, his enemies, his debts. All of it. His voice dropped. This world wasn't my choice. It was my inheritance. Claire found herself studying his profile, the sharp angles of his face, the tension in his jaw. For the first time, she saw past the careful mask he wore, saw the man underneath, trapped in a life he couldn't escape. You could walk away, she said softly. Could I? Alessandro turned to face her, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. When you have a child, Ms. Monroe, you do what you must to keep them safe. Even if that means staying in a world you hate. Even if it means becoming something you never wanted to be. The words hit too close to home. Wasn't she doing the same thing? Taking money from a criminal, agreeing to spy for the FBI, all to save Ethan. We're not so different, you and I, Alessandro continued, as if reading her thoughts. Both of us willing to sacrifice anything for our children. Both of us trapped by love. The moment felt too intimate, too human. Claire had come here expecting a monster, the man the FBI described, the criminal in the surveillance photos. Instead, she found someone who understood exactly what it meant to make impossible choices. I should go, she said, but didn't move. Stay, it wasn't a command, just a quiet request. Leo would love to say goodbye properly. And he hesitated. It's nice to talk to someone who doesn't want something from me, who sees past all of this. Below them, someone called Alessandro's name. Business matters, probably. He sighed, straightened his tie. 5 more minutes, Claire found herself saying. Then I really do have to go. Alessandro's smile was genuine, grateful. 5 minutes, then. They stood together on the balcony as the party wound down, watching the sun set over a world that kept pushing them together despite every reason they had to stay apart. And for those 5 minutes, Claire let herself forget about the FBI, about the danger, about everything except the strange understanding growing between them. It was a mistake she wouldn't recognize until much later. Claire had stayed longer than 5 minutes. She'd stayed for cake, for Leo's goodbye hug, for one more glass of champagne that made the world feel softer around the edges. By the time she left, twilight had settled over the grounds, and Alessandro had walked her to her car himself. She was halfway down the driveway when she realized she'd left her phone on the balcony. The security guard at the gate waved her back, through without question. Claire parked and walked around to the side entrance Alessandro had shown her. Quieter, he'd said, less formal. The party had ended, guests departed, and the mansion felt different in the gathering darkness. Larger, more imposing. She found the side door unlocked, let herself into a hallway lined with dark wood paneling. Voices drifted from somewhere ahead, male voices, tense and low. Claire moved toward the balcony stairs, trying not to eavesdrop, but the words stopped her cold. She's a liability, Alessandro. The feds will use her against us. The voice belonged to a man Claire had been introduced to earlier, Marco, Alessandro's consigliere. Older, gray-haired, with eyes that calculated everything. She saved my son's life. Alessandro's voice was controlled, but there was steel underneath. That's not something I'd take lightly. Neither do the feds, Marco's footsteps paced. Claire could hear them through the wall. They visited her 4 days ago. 2 agents, morning visit, stayed 20 minutes. You think that was a social call? Claire's blood went cold. They knew. Of course they knew. Alessandro probably had eyes on her apartment, her work, everywhere. I'm aware Alessandro's tone suggested this wasn't news. Then you know what they want. They're pressuring her to inform. And when they squeeze hard enough, when they threaten her kid, her job, her freedom, she'll break. Everyone breaks. Not everyone. You're being sentimental. It's going to get you killed. Marco's voice sharpened with frustration. We can solve this problem quietly. An accident. A mugging gone wrong. She disappears. The feds lose their leverage and Leo never has to know. The silence that followed made Claire's heart hammer so loud, she was certain they'd hear it. She pressed herself against the wall, every instinct screaming at her to run, but her legs wouldn't move. When Alessandro spoke again, his voice was quiet, deadly quiet. "Touch her, Marco, and I'll bury you myself." "You're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking perfectly clearly." Alessandro's words came faster now, harder. "Claire Monroe saved my son when she had every reason to keep driving. She's refused every reward, every attempt to pull her deeper into this world. She's not like us, Marco. She's not corrupted yet. And I won't be the one who destroys her." "Then you're a fool," Marco spat the words.
"She'll testify."
"She'll put you in prison, put all of us in prison, and for what? Because you feel grateful? Because she's pretty and kind, and reminds you there are still good people in the world." Claire heard movement, sharp, sudden. A body hitting a wall. "I said no." Alessandro's voice was ice. "You question my decisions again, and you'll find out exactly how far my gratitude extends. Are we clear?" A pause. Then Marco's voice strained. "Clear."
"Good.
"Now get out." Footsteps approached the hallway. Claire turned and ran, her flats silent on the marble floor. She made it to the side entrance, out into the cool night air, her phone forgotten. She didn't stop until she reached her car, hands shaking so badly she could barely get the key in the ignition. Marco had wanted her dead, would have killed her, cleanly and quietly, if Alessandro hadn't stopped him. But Alessandro had stopped him, had threatened his own consigliera to protect her. Claire sat in her car, engine running, trying to process what she'd heard. She should feel terrified. She did feel terrified. But underneath the fear was something else, something she didn't want to examine too closely. Alessandro had protected her. Not because she was useful, not because he wanted something from her. Because somewhere in his dark world, he'd drawn a line, and she stood on the safe side of it. Her phone buzzed. She'd been so panicked, she hadn't realized it was in her jacket pocket, not on the balcony at all. A text from an unknown number. "You left quickly. Everything all right?" Claire stared at the message. He knew she'd been there. Known she'd overheard. Was this a test? A warning? Her fingers moved before her brain could stop them.
"Fine.
Thank you for the party. Leo is lucky to have you." The response came within seconds. "I'm the lucky one. Drive safe, Claire." He'd used her first name. In 3 weeks, he'd always called her Ms. Monroe, formal, distant, proper. Now, just Claire. Like they'd crossed some invisible boundary neither of them had meant to cross. Claire drove home in a daze, her mind replaying Alessandro's words, "I won't be the one who destroys her." But destruction wasn't always intentional. Sometimes it was just proximity, being too close to something dangerous, letting it into your life because you believed you could control it. When she got home, she pulled out Agent Chen's card, stared at it for a long time. The smart thing would be to call, to tell them everything she'd overheard. Marco's threat. Alessandro's protection. Give them what they wanted, and walk away clean. Instead, Claire tore the card in half. Then quarters. Then eighths. She threw the pieces in the trash and told herself it was because she didn't trust the FBI, because they'd threatened her son, because cooperation felt like betrayal. But deep down, she knew the truth. She was protecting Alessandro Vescari, the man whose world had almost killed her tonight, the man who'd drawn a line in the sand and declared her untouchable. She was protecting him, and she didn't fully understand why. That should have terrified her more than Marco's threat. It didn't. The night shift always felt longer in winter. Claire had been driving the ambulance for 6 hours, running calls for chest pains and diabetic emergencies, the routine chaos that made up most of emergency medicine. Her partner, Jake, was dozing in the passenger seat as she navigated back to the station through empty streets. It was 2 a.m. when the SUV appeared in her rearview mirror. Black, tinted windows, driving too close. Claire's hands tightened on the wheel. Probably nothing. Late-night drivers were often aggressive, impatient. But something in her gut, the same instinct that had made her run toward Leo's burning car, told her this was different. "Jake," she kept her voice calm. "Wake up." He stirred, groggy. "What's?" The SUV accelerated, pulling alongside them. Claire saw the rear window sliding down, saw the dark shape of something emerging, and her training kicked in before her brain fully processed what was happening. She yanked the wheel hard right. The first gunshot shattered the passenger window. Jake screamed. Claire fought for control as the ambulance lurched across 2 lanes, tires squealing. More shots, rapid, professional, punching through metal. The side mirror exploded. Something hot grazed Claire's shoulder. "Get down," she shouted at Jake, who was already ducking below the dashboard, hands over his head. Claire floored the accelerator, but the ambulance wasn't built for speed. The SUV kept pace easily, and now a second vehicle was coming up fast on the driver's side. They were boxing her in. A concrete divider loomed ahead, the construction zone that had narrowed this stretch of highway to 1 lane. Claire had 3 seconds to make a choice: brake and let them surround her, or try to punch through. She chose neither. At the last second, she cranked the wheel left, jumping the ambulance over the low barrier into the construction zone. The impact jarred every bone in her body. Equipment crashed in the back. Jake was yelling something she couldn't hear over the screaming of metal on concrete. The ambulance skidded sideways, tipped, and Claire felt that sickening moment of weightlessness before they hit. The world went white, then dark, then red with pain. When Claire could see again, they were upside down, seatbelt cutting into her chest, blood running into her eyes from somewhere. Jake was unconscious beside her, breathing but not moving. The smell of gasoline was thick and chemical. She heard car doors slamming, footsteps on pavement. This is it, Claire thought distantly. Marco had won after all. Then came different sounds, more vehicles shouting, the sharp crack of return gunfire. Through her shattered window, Claire saw muzzle flashes in the dark, saw the attacking SUVs suddenly retreating, tires smoking. Strong hands were pulling at her door, voices speaking rapidly in Italian. Someone cut her seatbelt, caught her as she fell. Claire tried to focus on the face above her. Not Alessandro, but one of his men. The security guard from the mansion. "Don't move, Miss Monroe. You're safe now. Mr. Vescari is coming." Everything after that came in fragments. The drive to Alessandro's estate instead of a hospital. A doctor she didn't know examining her in a room that looked like it was designed for exactly this purpose, treating injuries you couldn't take to emergency rooms. Jake being tended to on another table, still unconscious but stable. And Alessandro, appearing in the doorway like a storm given human form, his face carved from rage barely held in check. Who? His voice was deadly calm. Who did this? Marco's cousin. One of his men reported, voice tight.
Carlo Russo.
He hired outside contractors, tried to make it look like a gang hit. Alessandro's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Where is Marco now?" "The warehouse. Waiting for you." Claire tried to sit up, but the doctor pushed her back down gently. "You have a concussion, possibly broken ribs. You need to rest." "Jake." "Your partner will be fine," the doctor assured her. "Cuts and bruises, mild shock. He's sedated now." Alessandro moved to her side, and up close, Claire could see the fury radiating off him like heat. But when he spoke to her, his voice was gentle.
"I'm sorry."
This should never have happened. "They were trying to kill me." Claire's voice came out smaller than she intended. "Marco, you said he wouldn't." "Marco acted without my permission. Hired his cousin to do what I explicitly forbade." Alessandro's jaw clenched. "That betrayal ends tonight." Claire grabbed his wrist before he could turn away. "What are you going to do?" He looked down at her hand on his arm, then met her eyes. In them, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Not anger, but something far more final. Judgment already passed. "What I should have done when he first suggested it," Alessandro said quietly. "Remove the threat." Alessandro, don't. But she didn't know how to finish that sentence. Don't kill him? Don't become the monster everyone says you are? Don't prove the FBI right. He tried to murder you, Claire. You who saved my son. Who asked for nothing. Who represents the last shred of good in my world. Alessandro's voice was soft, almost sad. There are lines even I won't allow to be crossed. Marco crossed them. He left before she could respond, his men following like shadows. Claire lay back on the examination table, staring at the ceiling, listening to Jake's sedated breathing beside her. Somewhere in this mansion, Alessandro Vescari was about to kill a man who'd served him for years. Kill him for trying to kill her. The doctor returned with pain medication, but Claire waved it away. She needed to feel this. The fear, the guilt, the horrible knowledge that someone was dying because of her. Because Alessandro had decided she was worth protecting at any cost. Through the walls, she heard nothing.
No gunshots, no screaming.
Whatever was happening in that warehouse, it was happening quietly, professionally. When Alessandro returned an hour later, his shirt was different. His hands were clean. His expression was carefully neutral. "It's done," was all he said. "You're safe now." But Claire had seen something in his eyes, the darkness he'd been hiding beneath that calm exterior, the capacity for violence that made him who he was. She'd seen the monster, and the monster had acted to protect her. That should have made her want to run. Instead, she just felt tired. So impossibly tired. "Take me home," she whispered.
Alessandro nodded.
Of course, but they both knew the truth. There was no going home from this. Not really. Not anymore. The FBI raid came 3 days after the ambush, when Claire was still sleeping on her sister's couch because her own apartment felt too exposed, too vulnerable. She woke to her phone vibrating with news alerts. Federal agents swarming Alessandro's businesses, his associates being led away in handcuffs, assets frozen, pending investigation. The carefully constructed empire was collapsing. Agent Chen appeared at her sister's door before noon, no longer bothering with pretense or politeness. "We know you were at his estate the night Marco Constanza died," she said without preamble. "We have surveillance footage of his men bringing you there in an ambulance. You were a witness to a murder, Ms. Monroe. That makes you an accessory, unless you cooperate." Claire's sister, Rebecca, tried to intervene. "She needs a lawyer. She needs to make a choice." Agent Chen's eyes were hard. "We're building a RICO case against Vescari. Multiple charges, racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder. With your testimony about Marco's death, about the organization structure, about what you've seen inside that mansion, we can put him away for life." "I didn't see anything," Claire said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Then we'll charge you with obstruction. Conspiracy. Accepting proceeds from criminal activity." Agent Chen pulled out her phone, showed Claire a photo of Ethan at school, smiling, unaware. "Your son's surgery is in 2 weeks. Switzerland. Expensive. All paid for with Vescari's blood money. You think immigration won't flag that? You think Swiss authorities won't freeze those funds the moment we notify them?" The threat was clear. Testify or lose everything, including Ethan's only chance at survival. "You're asking me to send a man to prison for saving my son's life. I'm asking you to tell the truth about a criminal organization." Agent Chen's voice softened slightly. "I know this is hard. I know you feel indebted to him. But Alessandro Vescari isn't a hero, Ms. Monroe. He's killed people. Destroyed families. The only reason he helped you was to buy your silence, your loyalty." "That's not true." The words came out before Claire could stop them. "Isn't it?" Agent Chen leaned forward. "Then why did he help you? Out of the goodness of his heart? Men like Vescari don't have hearts. They have assets. And right now, you're his most valuable one, a sympathetic single mother who makes him look human." Claire wanted to argue but couldn't. Because wasn't that exactly what she'd thought at first? That there had to be a catch, a hidden cost. Except she'd seen Alessandro with Leo. Heard the grief in his voice when he talked about inheriting a life he never wanted. Watched him threaten his own consigliera to keep her safe. Those weren't the actions of a man collecting assets. Agent Chen stood, dropping a subpoena on the coffee table. You have 48 hours to decide. Testify willingly, or we'll compel you. Either way, you're going to tell us everything you know about Alessandro Vescari. After she left, Rebecca sat beside Claire, putting an arm around her shoulders. What are you going to do? Claire didn't answer.
She didn't know.
That evening, her phone buzzed with a text from Alessandro's number. I know about the subpoena. Don't worry about Ethan's surgery. I'm making arrangements. She called him back immediately. He answered on the first ring. What kind of arrangements? Claire demanded. The kind that don't involve you. Alessandro's voice was calm, controlled.
I'm sending Leo abroad.
Switzerland, actually. He'll stay with family there. Ethan can go with him, same hospital, same doctor. You'll both be safe, away from all of this. You're sending them away together? 2 children, Alessandro said quietly. Neither should pay for their father's sins. The phrase hit Claire like a punch. You're not Ethan's father.
No.
But I'm responsible for putting him in danger by involving you in my world. So I'm removing him from it. A pause. Both of you, if you'll go. New identities, clean documents, enough money to start over anywhere you want. Claire sank onto the couch, her mind reeling. You're asking me to run. I'm giving you a way out. The FBI wants you to testify. My enemies want you dead as leverage against me. Either way, you're caught in a war that isn't yours. His voice dropped. Let me get you out, Claire. Please. And what happens to you? I stay. Face whatever's coming. Try to protect what's left of my organization, my people. Alessandro exhaled slowly. I knew this day would come eventually. Men like me don't get happy endings. But you and Ethan, you still can. Claire thought about Switzerland. Clean mountain air, safety, distance from everything that had gone wrong. Ethan recovering with Leo beside him. 2 boys who'd both been touched by violence finding peace together. It sounded perfect.
Impossible.
Cowardly. They'll freeze Ethan's surgery funds if I run, she said. I have accounts they don't know about. The money's already transferred, untraceable. Dr. Kozlov is expecting both boys next week.
Alessandro.
I'm tired, Claire. His voice cracked slightly, the first time she'd heard real vulnerability there. I'm tired of being the man everyone expects me to be. The monster. The criminal. The threat. For once, let me be something else. Let me be the man who saved the woman who saved his son. Claire closed her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks. If I run, they'll use it against you. They'll say you coerced me, that I'm fleeing to avoid testifying. I don't care. You should care. They're building a case that could put you away for life. Then let them. Alessandro's words came out fierce, final. I'd rather spend my life in prison knowing you and Ethan are safe than watch you get destroyed trying to protect me. You don't owe me that sacrifice. But maybe she did. Or maybe she just couldn't stand the thought of him facing this alone, paying the price for showing her mercy when his own world demanded ruthlessness. I need time to think, Claire whispered. You have 48 hours, Alessandro said. Same as the FBI gave you. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it. But Claire, he paused. Don't let them make you into a weapon against yourself. Don't let them turn your gratitude into guilt. You saved my son. Everything else is just noise. He hung up before she could respond. Claire sat in the growing darkness, the subpoena on the table, her phone in her hand, caught between impossible choices. Run and save Ethan. Stay and potentially destroy the man who'd saved them both. Testify and become the weapon Agent Chen wanted. Refuse and lose everything. There was no right answer. Only different kinds of wrong, different prices to pay. She had 48 hours to choose which price she could live with. The safe house was 2 hours outside the city, hidden at the end of a dirt road that wound through bare winter trees. Alessandro had sent the address with instructions. Come alone. Last conversation before you decide.
Claire shouldn't have gone.
She'd promised Rebecca she wouldn't, had told herself this was exactly the kind of mistake that got people killed in movies. But 48 hours had shrunk to 12, and she needed to see him one more time before choosing which life to destroy, his or her own. The house was small, rustic, nothing like Alessandro's marble mansion. He opened the door before she could knock, and Claire was struck by how different he looked. No suit, just jeans and a dark sweater, hair slightly disheveled.
Human.
Exhausted. "You came," he said, stepping aside to let her in. "I shouldn't have." "I know." He closed the door against the wind. Outside, rain had started, the slow, steady kind that turned everything gray and cold. "But I'm glad you did." The interior was sparse but comfortable. A fireplace crackled with dying embers. 2 glasses and a bottle of whiskey sat on the coffee table, as if he'd known she would come. Claire stood in the center of the room, arms crossed. "The FBI came to my sister's house this morning.
They know I'm involved now.
They're watching her, watching Ethan. They said if I don't show up to testify tomorrow, they'll issue a warrant for my arrest." Alessandro's jaw tightened. "The plane leaves at midnight. You can still..." "You knew," the words burst out of her. "When the FBI visited me that first time, you already knew. You've been watching me, investigating me, having your people track my every move. Don't deny it."
He didn't.
"Yes. Were you ever going to tell me?" "No." Alessandro poured whiskey into both glasses, though neither of them moved to take one. "Because telling you would have forced you to act.
To choose.
I wanted to give you as much normal life as possible for as long as possible." "Normal." Claire laughed bitterly. "My son almost died. I took money from a criminal. I watched your world try to kill me. Nothing about my life has been normal since I pulled Leo from that car." "I know. And I'm sorry." Alessandro finally met her eyes, and what she saw there stopped her anger cold. He looked gutted, defeated. "I'm sorry for all of it. For dragging you into this, for making you a target, for," his voice caught, "for caring about you when I had no right to." The confession hung in the air between them like smoke. "Don't," Claire whispered. "Don't say that." "Why not?" "It's true." Alessandro moved closer, not touching her but close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his face, the weight of years spent playing a role he hated. "I knew from the moment I sat in your apartment that you were dangerous."
Not to my organization, to me.
"Because you looked at me like I was human. Like I could be something other than what my father made me."
Alessandro.
"I'm tired," Claire. The words came out raw, honest. "I'm so tired of being the man everyone expects me to be. The kingpin. The threat. The monster who has to hurt people to keep his world intact. I don't want to be that man anymore." Claire felt tears burning her eyes. "Then don't be. Walk away. Come with us. We'll all go to Switzerland. Start over." "You know I can't do that." "Why not?" "Because men like me don't get to start over." His voice rose, then broke. "I have enemies, Claire. Rivals who would hunt me to the ends of the earth. Federal agents who won't stop until I'm in prison or dead. If I run with you, I make you a target forever. But if I stay, if I surrender," he stopped, gathering control. "If I give them what they want, they'll leave you alone. You and Ethan can disappear, live your lives, and maybe Leo can visit sometimes. Be friends with your son." 2 boys who survived their father's mistakes. Claire's chest felt like it was caving in. "You're going to surrender. Tomorrow morning. Before your testimony, before they can use you against me. I'll turn myself in, make a deal. Cooperate with their investigation in exchange for immunity for you. Full immunity. Wiping your record clean. They'll get their case. I'll get what I deserve. And you'll get your son's surgery without any strings attached." "No." The word came out fierce, desperate. "No, I won't let you do that. I'll testify that you saved Ethan's life, that you protected me, that you're not the monster they think." "But I am." Alessandro's voice was gentle, almost kind. "I've killed people, Claire. Ordered deaths. Built an empire on blood and fear. The fact that I tried to protect you doesn't erase any of that. It just makes me a monster with one redeeming quality." Rain battered the windows, violent now, turning the world outside to water and shadows. Claire moved without thinking, closing the distance between them, taking his face in her hands. "You're more than that," she said fiercely. "You're a father who loves his son. A man trying to do right in a world that doesn't allow it. He kissed her. It was brief, desperate, carrying the weight of everything they couldn't say. Claire felt herself responding before her brain could intervene, her hands sliding from his face to his shoulders, anchoring herself against the storm of emotions threatening to pull her under. When they broke apart, both of them were crying. "I don't want you to surrender," Claire whispered against his chest. "I know," Alessandro held her tighter. "But it's the only way I can save you." "And saving you," his voice cracked. "That's the only good thing I'll have done in this entire miserable life." They stood like that while the rain fell, two people caught in impossible circumstances, holding each other like drowning victims sharing one last breath before going under. Outside, dawn was coming, and with it, choices that would tear them apart. The police siren started at 4:47 a.m. Claire woke on the safe-house couch to find Alessandro already awake, standing at the window with coffee in hand, watching the red and blue lights wind up the distant road like a slow-moving constellation. "They're early," he said calmly. "I told them 6. Claire shot upright, her heart hammering. "You called them?" "Last night. After you fell asleep." He turned to face her, and his expression was peaceful in a way she'd never seen before.
Resolved.
"I made a deal, Claire. Full confession in exchange for complete immunity for you. No charges, no investigation, no connection between your name and mine in any legal capacity. Your son's surgery proceeds as planned with clean funds from a medical charity I established years ago." "No," Claire was on her feet, panic clawing at her throat. "No, you can't." "It's already done." Alessandro set down his coffee, moved to the table where manila folders sat stacked and organized. "These are documents for you and Ethan. New identities if you want them, though you won't need them legally. Bank accounts, property deeds, all transferred through legitimate channels. Everything you'll need. I don't want your money." Claire's voice broke. "I want you to stop acting like you're already dead." "I'm not dead. Just done." He picked up another envelope, this one addressed to Leo in careful handwriting. "Will you give this to my son?" When enough time has passed that he might understand. The reality of it hit Claire like ice water. He wasn't just surrendering. He was saying goodbye to everything, his son, his freedom, his life as he knew it. "Alessandro, please. There's a car out back. Keys are on the counter." His voice remained steady, but she could hear the effort it took. "Drive to the airport. The plane to Switzerland leaves at 7. Leo is already there with his aunt. Ethan can join him this afternoon if you call the number in the folder." The sirens were getting louder. Claire could see vehicles now, marked police cars, black FBI SUVs, even news vans bringing up the rear. They'd turned his surrender into a spectacle. "Come with me," Claire begged. "Right now, out the back. We'll run together." "And then what? Spend our lives hiding? Make our children fugitives?" Alessandro shook his head. "This is the only way Leo gets a normal life. The only way Ethan gets his surgery, without questions. The only way you're free." He walked to the door, his hand on the knob. Outside, the vehicles were pulling up, doors slamming, voices shouting commands. Claire grabbed his arm, desperate. "I'll tell them. I'll testify that you saved us, that you're not who they think. They'll say I coerced you, manipulated you, used your sick child as leverage." Alessandro's smile was sad, knowing. "In some ways, maybe they'd be right. I did use your situation, Claire. I saw an opportunity to keep someone good in my life, and I took it. I'm not the hero in this story. You're not the villain either. Maybe not. But I'm not innocent." He cupped her face gently, thumbs brushing away her tears. "I need you to understand something. Everything I did, the money, the protection, even last night, I did it because you reminded me there's still light in this world. Still kindness. Still people worth protecting. That's what you gave me. Hope for just a little while." The pounding started on the door. "FBI. We have a warrant." Alessandro kissed her forehead, then stepped back.
"Go. Please."
Don't let them see you here. I won't leave you. You have to. His voice turned firm, commanding. For Ethan.
For Leo.
They need their parents to make the hard choices. This is mine. Claire felt like her chest was being torn open. What do I tell Leo? Tell him his father loved him more than power, more than pride, more than his own life. Alessandro's eyes glistened. Tell him I tried to be better than I was. The door shuddered under another impact. Voices were shouting, counting down. Claire heard the distinctive sound of weapons being readied. Alessandro turned to face the door, straightening his shoulders, lifting his chin. In that moment, he looked every inch the king of the world he'd built, powerful, unbreakable, terrifying. Then he raised his hands and dropped to his knees. Don't shoot, he called out clearly.
I'm unarmed.
I'm surrendering. Claire backed toward the kitchen, toward the rear exit, even as everything in her screamed to stay. The front door burst open, a flood of agents in tactical gear, weapons raised, voices overlapping in sharp commands. On the ground. Hands behind your head. Alessandro complied, lowering himself face down on the floor with practiced ease. Like he'd imagined this moment 1,000 times. Agent Chen appeared in the doorway, her expression triumphant. She saw Claire backing away, their eyes meeting for one loaded moment. Let her go, Alessandro said from the floor, his voice calm despite the knee in his back, the handcuffs clicking around his wrists. She was never part of this. She's a victim. Let her walk away. Agent Chen's jaw tightened, but she nodded curtly at the agents blocking Claire's path. They stepped aside.
Claire ran.
She ran through the kitchen, out the back door, into the gray dawn where rain still fell in steady sheets. Behind her, she heard Alessandro being read his rights, heard the triumph in the agents' voices, heard the news crews already reporting the capture of one of the city's most wanted criminals. She drove away with tears blurring her vision, Alessandro's envelope on the passenger seat, the weight of his sacrifice crushing her chest until she could barely breathe. In her rearview mirror, she saw him one last time, kneeling in the rain, surrounded by agents, beneath the iron sky that had hung over the city for as long as she could remember. Unarmed, unafraid, surrendering everything to save her. The last image she would carry forever, a king choosing to fall so his son and hers could rise. 6 months later, the Italian village of Bellagio clung to the hillside above Lake Como like something from a postcard, all terracotta roofs and ancient stone streets that wound between buildings older than America itself. Claire stood on the balcony of their small rental villa, watching the morning sun paint the water gold, and tried to remember what winter in the city had felt like. It seemed like a lifetime ago. Someone else's life. Behind her, she could hear the boys laughing, Ethan and Leo, their voices bright and careless in the way only children who'd survived darkness could manage. They'd had their surgeries within days of each other, Dr. Kozlov working her miracle hands on both hearts. Now, 3 months post-op, they were inseparable, brothers in everything but blood. Mom, Ethan called from inside. Leo wants to know if we can hike to the waterfall today. Claire smiled despite the ache that never quite left her chest. If you take it slow and stay on the marked trail. Their excited whoops faded as they ran to get ready, leaving her alone with her coffee and the view that still took her breath away every morning. The guilt took her breath away too, but differently. Alessandro Vescari was serving 20 years in a federal maximum security prison. The trial had lasted 3 weeks, dominated headlines, exposed decades of organized crime operations. He'd pled guilty to racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy. In exchange, the prosecution had dropped the murder charges. Not enough evidence, they'd claimed, though Claire knew the truth. He'd protected his people even from behind bars. She'd kept her immunity. The FBI had tried to push for her testimony anyway, but Alessandro's lawyers had held firm. The deal was ironclad. Claire Monroe walked away clean, just another victim caught in a criminal's web. The public bought it. She wasn't sure she did. The mail arrived late morning, delivered by the cheerful postwoman who always commented on how healthy the boys looked. Most of it was junk, but one envelope stopped Claire's heart. Unmarked, cream-colored, expensive paper. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a letter in Alessandro's careful handwriting and a bank statement showing an account in her name. The number made her dizzy, not millions. Tens of millions. More money than she could spend in 3 lifetimes. The letter was short. Claire, by now the boys have recovered, and I hope you've found some peace in that beautiful country. I've never been to Italy, ironic considering my heritage, but Leo sends photos and it looks like the kind of place where good people can heal. The money is clean. Legitimate investments I made years ago when I still believed I might leave this life someday. It's in your name, untouchable by authorities, protected by international law. Use it for the boys. For yourself. For whatever life you choose to build. I want you to know something. I don't regret my choices. Not the surrender, not the confession, not any of it. For the first time in my adult life, I made a decision that wasn't about power or survival or fear. I chose to protect something good. I chose you. That matters more than freedom ever could. Leo writes to me every week. He tells me about school, about Ethan, about the lake and the mountains and how you make them pasta on Sundays. He sounds happy. That's all I ever wanted for him. Happiness, safety, a childhood unmarked by my mistakes. Thank you for giving him that. Thank you for letting him keep his friend, for being the mother to both of them when I can't be there. I know you carry guilt. I can feel it in the spaces between Leo's words when he mentions you. Please don't. You saved my son twice, once from fire, once from becoming like me. That's not a debt. That's grace. There's a phrase in Italian. C'è ancora luce sotto il cielo di ferro. There's still light beneath the iron sky. You showed me that light, Claire. You reminded me that even in the darkest places, good people still exist. Still fight. Still save lives without asking for anything in return. I spent my whole life believing I was trapped in darkness. But you proved that light can reach anywhere, even into the heart of a man who thought he'd lost his soul years ago. Live well. Raise those boys to be better than their fathers. Let them be friends, brothers, reminders that sometimes good things come from terrible circumstances. And if you ever doubt that you made the right choices, taking my money, letting me surrender, building this life from the wreckage, look at them. Look at Ethan's healthy smile and Leo's laughter. That's what your courage bought. That's what my surrender protected. It was worth it. All of it. Tell Leo the first love him. Tell him I'm proud of who he's becoming. Tell him his father tried, in the end, to be the man he deserved. And Claire, thank you. For everything. For the light. P.S. The account also includes a trust for Leo's education and future. Make sure he knows it comes from legitimate sources. I want him to build his life on solid ground, not blood money. Let him be free of all of this. Claire read the letter 3 times before the tears came. She stood on the balcony, watching the lake shimmer below, and let herself cry for the man who'd given up everything. For the father in prison who would miss his son's childhood. For the impossible choice he'd made to save people he barely knew. Behind her, the boys burst onto the balcony, backpacks ready, faces bright with excitement. Ready, Mom? Ethan asked. Claire wiped her eyes, folded the letter carefully, and tucked it into her pocket. She looked at the 2 boys, her son with his repaired heart, Leo with his father's eyes and his mother's gentle smile, and saw the future Alessandro had bought with his freedom. Yes, she said, taking each boy's hand. I'm ready. They walked down the hillside toward the waterfall, sunlight filtering through ancient olive trees, the mountains rising in the distance like promises of safety. The iron sky of the city was gone, replaced by endless blue and the kind of peace that came from knowing you'd survived. Claire thought about Alessandro in his cell, probably looking at photos Leo had sent, finding whatever light existed in that darkness. She thought about debt and sacrifice, about the strange mathematics of grace that turned a criminal's surrender into a family's salvation. She would write him back, carefully, through the lawyers, maintaining the fiction that she was just a victim who'd moved on. She would tell him the boys were thriving, that Leo spoke of him with pride, that sometimes good people made terrible mistakes, and sometimes terrible people made good choices, and the world was more complicated than anyone wanted to admit. But most of all, she would tell him thank you. For the money, yes. For Ethan's life. For Leo's future. But more than that, for showing her that light existed even beneath iron skies. That redemption wasn't always freedom. That sometimes surrender was the bravest thing a person could do. The boys ran ahead, their laughter echoing off ancient stone walls, and Claire followed them into the sunlight, carrying Alessandro's letter over her heart, knowing she would keep it forever. A reminder that even in darkness, somewhere, someone was still fighting for the light.
The end.